What up, sports fans? This is Jake Waxman from Two Guys Talk Sports. Today with a very rare reaction video. And tonight, I'm going to react to the whole bracket for the NCAA tournament. I'm going to give you guys a few quick thoughts on the NCAA tournament field and the bracket overall. So, I'm going to start in terms of the NCAA tournament bracket. Okay, Selection Sunday is come and gone. We know the field now. Everybody's ready and poised to fill those brackets out. So I'm going to give you guys my thoughts. I'm going to treat you guys to a rare reaction to the NCAA tournament bracket. Alright, I'm going to start with this. Honestly, looking at this bracket, the NCAA, they did a terrible job this year. I think there's quite a few teams who are... Now, a lot of the teams that are in this field, or most of them deserve to be there. But there's plenty of them that are underseeded. Or some who should be switching seeds, for lack of better words. But I'm going to start with what everyone, the thought that everyone is seething about. Dear NCAA Selection Committee, what in the Sam hell made you think that North Carolina deserved to be the NCAA tournament this year? Really, I would like to know what was going through your head. If you are trying to put together the best field for the NCAA tournament, congratulations, you did an awful job. Because North Carolina, their resume says first four out when you look at it. I think they only had one true quad one win. And that's it. That's not good enough. And everybody, a lot of upset teams. They got in over teams like West Virginia, teams like Indiana, and teams like Boise State, who I think had a much better resume. You could have put one of those teams in there, and that would have made a lot more sense than North Carolina. All right, there's only one thing I can think of. Money talks, the name of it. And I've also heard and I think I heard this from somewhere. Apparently, in terms of the selection committee, someone from North Carolina is on the committee. I think the athletic director for North Carolina Athletics might be on the committee. Correct me if I'm wrong. But if that is the case, he should have had no say in selecting the NCAA tournament field, because he probably had a lot of influence, and it's probably another big reason why North Carolina got in. Look, I'm not saying that North Carolina is not a good basketball team this season, but based on the resume, they're not good enough to be in. They should have been first four out. But you know what? That's what we got. And hopefully, all I can say is I hope North Carolina plays like they deserve to be in. All right, hopefully they're going to have to play their best basketball in Dayton. They're taking on San Diego State. Not going to be an easy matchup. But anything goes in the first four, which begins on March 18th. That's a Tuesday. And then ends on March the 19th, which is a Wednesday. So, anyway. So, pretty much that's that. Last year, it was Virginia who didn't deserve to be in. And, oh my God, they looked awful in that tournament. And this season, the NCAA was just like, hey, you want to see me do it? You saw me put one team who didn't deserve to be in the NCAA tournament. Want to see me do it again for the second year in a row? Boom. North Carolina. Look. Now, this North Carolina team, no doubt that they're better than the Virginia team from last year, but no. I'm sorry, they didn't deserve to be in, all right? Okay? They don't have enough quality wins. It's cut and dry. The only reason that North Carolina is in is because they're North Carolina and because money talks. The NCAA should be focusing on putting together the best NCAA tournament bracket possible. And guess what? They failed to do that this year. In fact, they fell flat on their faces. And a lot of it because they put a North Carolina team who did not deserve to be in because of their resume. North Carolina got in because of their name and not their resume. Simple as that. Now, there were far more deserving teams like West Virginia and as a Purdue fan, I'll say Indiana deserved to be in because they at least had 2 very big quad 1 wins. And same with Boise State. I could go on about... I could go on in terms of like talking about IU. I could go on about how they needed to win at least one game in the NCAA tournament to be a first 4 team in, or to feel comfortable being a first 4 team in. Which, that is the opinion I'll hold. But I'm not going to get into that. Just, wow. We've come to the point where, you know what? You just can't count on the NCAA tournament committee to get it right because they don't want the best, because in terms of filling out the whole field, they don't want all the best teams. They want the big names in the tournament. By the way, Indiana is also a big name when it comes to NCAA men's college basketball, and yet they got left out. But I thought teams like Indiana, West Virginia, and even Boise State deserve to be in more than North Carolina. Now, North Carolina may put on a better show when they get in the first 4 than some of those teams I just mentioned, but if we're going by like best teams and by best resumes, there are far more deserving teams. And the NCAA did a craptastic job putting together this field. I know it's never easy, but, and I could go, and it's not just the fact that they put North Carolina in. There's quite a few teams that I can name that are underseeded and some that are overseeded. I'll get to that in a bit. So now, all right, I'm going to break down now kind of the brackets. First of all, quick thought. Here's the South, all right? So that's the number 1 seed in the tournament as a whole is Auburn. They chose the South. The number 2 team in that side of the bracket is none other than Michigan State. And then you got Iowa State at number 3 and Texas A&M at number 4. Holy crap. This is the region of death this year. You know, last year it was the East region, which UConn was the number 1 seed in and number 1 seed overall in the tournament. But this year, you know, I always say there's always that one region in the NCAA tournament. That's the region of death. This year's South region of death. Going to be a lot of tough matchups there. Especially for teams like Auburn and Michigan State. So I could go in about that. In terms of the South, looking at the South, Michigan, a number 5 seed in the South. Okay, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm shocked Michigan got a number 5 seed. I thought, and as a Purdue fan, I'm going to be honest. Michigan should have, at the very least, have been a 4 seed. All right, I think their resume was more of a 4 seed resume. But instead, they got a 5 seed, and might be in a tough matchup now with, if I'm correct, looking at it, UC San Diego. And then they're on the same side as Auburn. That could be really tough if they get to the Sweet 16. And there's Yale, too. There's never any... Whew. And, you know, Michigan should have been like a number 4 seed. Switch it with my Purdue Boilermakers if you want. Or even, you know, I thought they deserved a 4 seed more than, say, Texas A&M or even Arizona. Okay, that's just my opinion. But Michigan is underseeded in this tournament. But we'll see. We'll see how they respond to being a 5 seed. It's not going to be easy. But if Michigan's a tough team, though. And Dusty May has done a great job. He should have been Big Ten Coach of the Year, or should have shared that award with Tom Izzo. So that's just some of my thoughts on the South seed. So in terms of the South region, pretty much the region of death, and Michigan is underseeded here. Going on to the east side of things. You know what? If you're Duke, you got to be licking your chops a little bit, because you could not have drawn up an easier path to the Elite Eight. Looking at this side of the bracket, Duke is, in terms of the toughest team that Duke might face, or could potentially face, might be Baylor. Baylor is tough, I will say that. But aside from that, Duke, they got a nice path to the Elite Eight. If they could play up to their best and get there, then everything else will be much tougher. Then for the Elite Eight, they could have the potential of playing Alabama, who absolutely has all the pieces needed to make another Final Four run this year, and maybe even win the national championship. We'll see. Depends on how the SEC looks, of course, in the NCAA tournament. But, oh, man. Now, for Duke, here's the thing. Will Cooper flag it? Will he be ready to go? But by the time the NCAA tournament begins, that's going to be key. Will he be, or you know what? I have no question that Cooper Flag's going to be like ready to go, but will he be 100%? That's what we're going to be looking for. So those are just some of my thoughts from the East. And moving on to the Midwest. All right. This is something else I've said. There's always that one bracket every year where glorious chaos ensues. Like the one seed goes down and all hell breaks loose. Then anyone could come out of that bracket. This year's Midwest bracket, this could be the chaotic bracket where anyone could come out of that bracket. Because Houston is the number one seed. And last year they lost in the Sweet 16. A lot of it, injuries played a lot of part. But this year's Houston team, I'm not sure if they're as good as last year's Houston team. Now, how they got the Midwest over Florida to me is a little baffling. I thought Florida should have been the third number one seed and should have gotten the Midwest instead of Houston. Houston should have been the one representing the West, in my opinion, because I thought Florida had a better resume. But maybe Florida wanted the West. Who knows? But all things considered, when you think about it, Houston, I mean, any one of these teams, shoot. You got teams like Gonzaga, teams like Georgia, Clemson, McNeese. That's right, McNeese. Purdue, and High Point. These are any one of these teams on Houston's side leading up to the Sweet 16 could get to the Sweet 16. That's how wide open this part of the Midwest is. Like, we could see Gonzaga get to the Sweet 16. Purdue could make a Sweet 16 run. Shoot, Clemson could get there. McNeese is dangerous, too. They could make a run. High Point. Can't overlook them. Any one of those teams, even Georgia, any one of those teams I just named could make a run to the Sweet 16. And on the other side, you got teams like Tennessee. Tennessee's got to be licking their chops. They got to be licking their chops because this is the kind of bracket that they want. This is a golden opportunity for the Volunteers to finally break through and get to the Final Four. And they are licking their chops, and they're saying this is our opportunity. They're just praying, of course, that they don't meet up with Purdue in the Elite Eight. Of course, because Purdue would have the chance to do the funniest thing for the second year in a row. But we'll see if that happens. That's just me talking smack. But in all seriousness, though, Tennessee, this bracket favors them a lot, the Midwest. But anything can happen in this Midwest. And finally, going into the West. This is a tough one. Maybe almost as tough as the South, but not quite. But I would say this is the second toughest bracket. Not an easy path for Florida, who's the final number one seed. And they got St. John's as their number two. And St. John's, oh boy, nobody wants to see the Johnnies. Okay, nobody. They are tough. And Rick Pitino, he's coached up those guys well. And you also got teams in this side of the bracket. You know, we got UConn in this side of the bracket. Do they got something special? Do they got another March Madness run in them? We'll see. This UConn team clearly not as good as the last two, but don't underestimate them or don't overlook them. And then there's Maryland. Maryland, they're tough. And Derek Queen, that kid can ball. Great defense by Maryland. They're physical, they're athletic, and they can score in bunches when they need to. They'll have to get through Grand Canyon first, who's another tough team. And then Texas Tech, Drake. Don't overlook. Drake's another team that can make a Cinderella run. This is their third straight NCAA tournament. So, and then and here's another. All right, so we got another matchup that's particularly interesting. Kansas and Arkansas. You got John Calipari and of course Bill Self, two of some of the best coaches in college basketball. And also Kansas at number 7, another team that I believe is overseeded. Kansas should have been an 8, should have been a 9, maybe an 8. All right, I don't think Kansas is good. I don't think Kansas' resume was good enough for a 7 seed. I thought they should have been an 8 or a 9. That's just my take. So I mentioned Michigan being underseeded, and Kansas I think is overseeded. So those are examples of like underseeded and overseeded that I'm going to give to you folks. So that's just some of my thoughts on the bracket. Oh, by the way, Baylor at number 9 in the East. I think that's a team that to me is a little underseeded. Just by a little bit. They are underseeded. But that's just my take. Of course, now nobody's going to think too much about where they're seated because a lot of teams are going to have that opportunity to prove that either A, they were underseeded, or they're going to prove that they were much overseeded. But here we go. Welcome to March Madness, everyone. It's that wonderful time of year. Ladies and gentlemen, start your brackets. It's time to play some basketball. So, I'll be watching this tournament with a lot of great intrigue, despite the fact that I think the NCAA did a terrible job setting the field. All right. A lot of teams that were underseeded or overseeded, as well as teams that only got in the NCAA tournament because of their name. Nothing more than that. So, this has been my thoughts on the NCAA tournament bracket. Hope you enjoy the madness, sports fans. And this is Jake Waxman from Two Guys Talk Sports, wishing you all a good night.